Hello and welcome to Moneylife. This is Sucheta Dalal. So, are you all set for a summer holiday? Remember Cliff Richards? Everybody is going on a summer holiday. I'm sure you're thinking of how you're going to travel. Well, air travel remains the unrivaled and preferred mode of long distance travel for any of us. You want to travel long distances, you want to cut time, you want speed. So 4.7 billion passenger trips were logged worldwide in 2023, according to the International Air Transport Association. Now, why am I discussing it today? Because, as you know, we want speed, we want cost efficiency, we want service, we want punctuality. And if something goes wrong, your entire holiday is ruined. But there is hardly any regular flyer who can say that I've never had a problem. Invariably, there are issues, but because airlines by and large are punctual, don't cancel, don't downgrade you, we still prefer, doesn't matter the occasional chaos that's caused by flight delays, cancellations, diversions, bad service, or even worse, emergency landings in a strange country, which leave you stranded there and sometimes complaining about whether the airline gave you accommodation or food or not. Now, the reason why I looked at this is a letter by EAS Sarma, 83, who is a former secretary of the central government. He's been a revenue secretary. He has headed several ministries as secretary. He suffered two harrowing experiences while traveling with his 77-year-old wife in less than 2 months. And since he is now a very activist citizen, he has raised all these issues in a letter to the Civil Aviation Secretary dated 5th April. He made this letter public after telling the Civil Aviation Secretary that he is going to make it public. So what happened to him? First, Indigo Airlines abruptly cancelled a Salem-Bangalore flight on which he was booked without prior notice. So the couple had to scramble to book an alternative flight with Alliance Air and Air India Express, which meant additional costs and uncertainty. Soon after, in a second incident, now Alliance Air cancelled the Salem-Bangalore flight after having issued boarding passes. So the Sarmas had to hire a taxi and pay an exorbitant 11,800 to reach Bangalore for the connecting flight to Visakhapatnam. This ordeal is so familiar to so many of us. Beyond the 6 major metro cities, flight schedules are erratic, options are limited, and cancellations seem to happen anytime the airline wishes it. But Mr. Sarma is making a different point. It is about flawed policy. He argues that the government's push to set up airports at multiple locations in the guise of providing connectivity has resulted in us having far too many airports served by very few airlines. This lack of competition, he says, has led to a regressive cartel of private airline companies, allowing them to exploit passengers with impunity. Now, I said, let me look at the numbers, let's look at the complaints. I discovered that the Directorate General of Civil Aviation has a passenger charter. It is more or less aligned to international standards of developing countries, and it's got very detailed graded compensation for delays, cancellations, downgrades, overbooking, and also specifies that you have to get amenities or vouchers. In addition, it has an Air Seva platform, airseva.gov.in, where it offers grievance redress, so you can file a complaint. But transparency remains a gaping hole because they do not put out any data. They don't say how many airlines, which the DGCA, if you ask me, is supposed to do. So we have no details of cancellations, downgrades, or whatever, whether there was redressal or not, whether people had to wait for a complaint, what happened to refunds. Nothing is known officially on their website. So I looked at the Ministry of Consumer Affairs website. They have Jago Grahak Jago, National Consumer Helpline. So are they putting out data? Obviously, there are complaints over there. There is redress as well, but no comprehensive data of refunds or penalties is available even here. Compensation itself, as you know, in the airline business, is difficult because sometimes they give you an alternate flight. Sometimes you're happy, even if there's a 4-hour delay and you ought to get compensated, you say, forget it, I've got an alternate flight, I'm going. Or you get a voucher and you say, it's okay, it's much better than fighting. And many of us in India are so used to bad service that if the airline treats you well, put you up in a hotel, you don't even complain and don't even make a claim. But media reports cite all kinds of refunds. Okay. So Money Control, which is a well-known website, claims that airlines paid 24.86 lakh for cancellation, which affected 18,818 passengers in February 2025. Small amount, if you ask me. Look at the number affected. It also noted that Indigo paid just 18,000 in compensation for the period Jan 22 to September 24, despite 25,500 reported cancellations. Now, Indigo is the largest carrier. So obviously, people are getting compensated, but not enough. So local circles had a survey in April which asked people about their flying experience, and it revealed that 61% of passengers affected by cancellations in the last year alone had not received compensation. What usually happens is airlines cite extraordinary circumstances to avoid liability because this is a loophole or an escape hole given to them by the DGCA. So they say things beyond their control, nobody checks, or rather, DGCA is supposed to check, but obviously they're getting away with it. So it's obvious, bottom line, compensation is being given. There are penalties, maybe inconsistent, but there is no clarity on who gets how much and how many people are affected and how many get a refund. Mr. Sarma, however, makes a different point on the refund process. And this is a serious point that applies to all online services. We know that payment for online bookings are instantaneous. You hit your button and NEFT or credit card and it's debited instantly. It also includes an anachronistic convenience charge. I don't know what is the convenience because you are making the effort. All that is convenient is you're not going to an office, but that's also convenient to the airline. But we are still paying a hefty convenience charge. The government is allowing that to happen. When it comes to refund, there's no convenience. In fact, you don't get compensated for the inconvenience. Refunds take anywhere between 7 to 10 days if you're lucky. Now, Mr. Sarma alleges that airlines strategically hold on to these funds, using them as interest-free working capital at the cost of passengers. He also says that if there was an independent audit, it would reveal that the money may run into several thousand crores annually. Now, you multiply that with the broader issues of the Indian digital economy, whether you're buying anything on Amazon or elsewhere, payment is instantaneous. Refund takes 7 to 10 days. You keep your eyes peeled, you follow up, and if it hasn't happened, you're supposed to chase them. All the convenience goes out of the window when that happens. Yet, the situation is not all bad. That's why we keep flying. India's aviation sector, despite all this, despite these challenges, is a global powerhouse. It ranks third largest in terms of domestic market, is growing rapidly. Indigo, about whom all of us have complaints, commands a 60% market share. It is profitable. The Tatas have a 10 to 12% market share, even when they're navigating a complex transition, merging Vistara, which had a premium niche, with Air India, which they had to take over as a kind of white elephant. In fact, Air India has gone back home to the Tatas. It was one of the best airlines in the world when they had it until the government just took it over and nationalized it. Then there's SpiceJet, still holding on to a 5% share while it grapples with all kinds of financial difficulties and has flights grounded. That's the Indian situation. India, as it happens, when you look at it, does no better or worse than global airlines. All of them have similar cancellations and service delivery issues and delays. I mean, barring a few notable exceptions like Singapore Airlines, Emirates, and Qatar Airways, apparently everybody is more or less the same. And this data is actually put out by Travel Perk, which is a startup which compiles this and puts out data, makes travel easier for business travelers. So in 2024, as far as India is concerned, it's a bright spot on international flights. Cancellations were just 1.1%, which is among the lowest among the top 10 countries. So first, India is among the top 10 countries. Cancellations are among the lowest, as compared to 5% for China and 3.4% for Canada. As for flight delays, global numbers, about 70% to 75% are on time. But 30 to 35 or 37% of flights experience minor or major delays. Minor is anything beyond 15 minutes, which means that nearly 70% are on time. And India ranked fourth after the US, Italy, and China in terms of delays. So there we are doing badly. We are not on time. We don't cancel. But when you look at it, given the Indian situation, given the lack of airlines, we seem to be doing all right. Domestic travel, however, is a different story. It remains plagued by policy missteps. Aviation is, as a business, is glamorous, but it's high cost, very low margins, vulnerable to all kinds of risks, climate, pandemic, rain, geopolitical issues. Somebody says no fly zone, somebody is going to war with another country. Everything affects air travel. It's got high operational costs. And in India, aviation turbine fuel is burdened with heavy taxation, and the government ignores all complaints, pleas, and requests to reduce it and make travel easier for people. All this eats into profitability. And then there are all the regulatory changes and challenges that are so typical of India, adding to uncertainty of business. In India, there's another factor. Historically, India has granted licenses to industrialists who are so enamored or glamour struck by aviation. They want to own an airline, doesn't matter if they have any experience or not, and mainly no deep pockets, which leads to financial mismanagement and misuse of the airlines themselves, which is what leads to financial mismanagement. So the first lot of airlines after privatization of poultry farmer and what have you, saw the collapse of the Manya Airlines, Modi Luft, East West Airlines. Of course, they all offered great service as compared to Indian Airlines, which was government owned. But service alone is not enough. It comes at a cost. If you don't run it efficiently, you collapse. The next decade saw a bunch of new airlines being licensed and a new set of failures. So Sahara Airlines, Kingfisher, in fact, Kingfisher acquired Deccan Airways when it was wobbling, and then both collapsed. Then you had Jet Airways, the number one airline, had beaten Indian Airlines. That collapse doesn't matter. All the political clout that it had used on the way to becoming number one. And Air India and Indian Airlines kept declining because they are long mired in political interference, bureaucracy, until it became such a white elephant with so many losses and unions that the government finally sold the whole package to the Tatas, and the Tatas, happily or unhappily, took back Air India, which was their baby. And everybody's hoping that it's going to turn around, but it's going through a difficult time. In fact, I think the decision happened because Jet Airways and Kingfisher shut down, and it looked embarrassingly as though India, which is talking about a growing economy, will have no air carriers in the air. All this thing about flag carrier and whatever, you weren't going to have enough of airlines. Ironically enough, in this very period when airlines were shutting down and Air India and Indian Airlines were doddering, the government announced the ambitious UDAN scheme, Ude Desh Ka Aham Nagrik. This was in 2016. It promised regional connectivity and affordable flights to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. What does this mean? It meant that airports were going to go up from 74 to 220. Where were the airlines to fly these people? Consequence of grand plans without adequate carriers has led to the kind of harassment that Mr. Sarma has documented. Passengers depending on UDAN, especially tier 2 and tier 3 cities, can only hope that the government revises its aviation policies to ensure that there are more airlines competing for growing passenger traffic at its 220 airports. Indian aviation has high potential. It already contributes 5% to the national gross domestic product. It's an industry, however, that demands stable regulatory policies, sensible taxation, especially on turbine fuel, air turbine fuel, a recognition that it's prone to all kinds of risks and vulnerabilities and operates on thin margins and high expectations. Only when this is recognized can there be competition, can there be more airlines, and then the focus will be on service delivery and customer satisfaction. Until these systemic issues are addressed, the skies will remain a realm of convenience and chaos for Indian travelers, with consumer satisfaction, service delivery, and compensation taking a backseat. So what Mr. Sarma says is valid. But unless you have a situation where airlines don't think they're doing a favor that they have planes in the sky, the government cannot get tough. You need to have competition. You need to have people surviving and competing in this business, which means that the government has to look inwards. So while you're planning that holiday, share this and talk to the people. Government listens to social media, spread the word and share this. And of course, subscribe. Thank you so much.